I'm here with a special guest, a different kind of guest than we might typically have here, the children's book author, Amy Kimlat. Amy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks so much for doing the show. You wrote a children's book about a girl becoming a magician.
Yeah, that's right.
Our listeners would be familiar with your husband, Kostya, but he's not the reason why you wrote this book, right?
Well, Kostya certainly reintroduced me to the magic world, but he really reintroduced me instead of saying introduced me because I was a kid magician myself. I like to joke that I was the first person in this family to perform a magic show. I definitely beat him to it because I did a magic show for my third grade class, and then I did one again for my eighth grade class.
What did you perform for your third grade class?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have a distinct memory of doing one of those routines where I like had my friend sit in a chair and then I put my finger on her forehead and told her that she wouldn't be able to get up because my finger was just so strong. And then she loved it. My spectator loved it. She was 8. And and then I have this second memory from that show where I must have done some sort of like invisible ink routine. I don't know, but it required the use of a hard-boiled egg, which my mom had boiled for me. And I don't remember doing the routine at all. I just remember the show being over and not knowing what to do with this egg. And so I didn't know where to put it. And so it was like stinky. It was like smelling in my desk. And so I asked to go to the bathroom, and then I put it in the bathroom trash, and I felt so guilty that I made the bathroom smell so bad, like I had just committed this horrible school crime, and I felt terrible. Clearly, I still remember feeling bad about this.
I mean, that is the most peculiar case of magician's guilt I've ever heard of.
I know. Yeah, I got road stories from third grade.
And your eighth grade performance, was that the egg, or was that a different performance?
There was no egg in eighth grade. I learned my lesson, but another round thing kind of led me astray. I did a cups and balls routine, and I didn't own any real magic props. And so I fashioned balls out of rolled up Play-Doh that I wrapped in saran wrap. And I did this routine, and one of the balls that was supposed to be hidden just rolled away and across the table, and I was totally mortified, and I thought, okay, I guess magic's not for me.
That was that.
Yep, and that was that. That was that. Which leads me to why I wrote this book, really.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, what particularly inspired? I'm sure, like you said, magic's been around you. You know, you've had your own little experience with it, but what specifically motivated you to write this book? This is your first book?
Yes, it's my first book.
Okay.
Yeah, I at the time when I wrote it, I wrote the first draft several years ago, and then I shelved it. And when I wrote it at the time, I was going to a lot of magic shows with Kostya and magic conventions, and it was very obvious that the majority of the magicians were male. And I mean, I even noticed, just as his wife, just the difference in the way that I was treated by a lot of people. And I was thinking, why are there not more women who are magicians? And then I started reflecting on my experience as a child. And I felt like it was kind of twofold. One, we joke like I quit magic because I had one bad cups and balls performance, but it's true that I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I certainly had those tendencies as a child. And I think it's very common with girls to have this kind of complex. And I thought I just had to be naturally good at things. And it's so obvious now that I just needed practice and persistence. And these are messages that I take for granted now, especially as a parent, but it's not something that I really thought a lot about when I was in middle school, that I needed to just keep going, and that all magicians or performers of any kind, they all have failures, and that's just part of the journey, and you need to experience those things. And so it was important to me to deliver that message right from the beginning when kids are really young.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the book is called Hocus Pocus Practice Focus. So obviously, like, it was the integral lessons right there in the title.
Exactly.
You have children.
Mm-hmm.
or is this something that you found yourself teaching them?
That's a great question. Kostya has started to teach our oldest, who is still only 3 years old, a little bit of magic. And I'll never forget the first time he taught her a trick. It was right after I had read Hocus Pocus Practice Focus to her for the first time. And she was totally riveted by this book. Her reaction far exceeded any of my expectations. She sat for the whole thing and she asked questions and was disappointed that it was over. And then after, she really seemed to grasp the message, because Kostya taught her this, the jumping hairband trick across her fingers. And I was in a different room. And right after he taught it to her, she comes running across the house. Mommy, I can't believe I just learned my first magic trick. Like I know, it was so cute. Like she had this awareness that it was a big deal, and she has struggled with this trick a lot because her hands are so little. But every time she doesn't get frustrated, which is remarkable for her being 3 years old, and just talks about how she needs to practice it more. She got the message of the book, which is just amazing.
That's really fantastic. And that's what I mean, is that like the takeaway of the book is not just for magic. I feel like
Right.
I have two sons who are 7 and 9, and they do gravitate towards the stuff they're good at, and then when they hit a plateau, they get bored and they're done, right? And you're kind of like,
Right.
no, that's where the whole thing starts.
Right. That's where the growth is.
Yeah. I'll be reading this book to them as well. I finished
That's
it
awesome.
in just 2 sessions, so I thought it was really
I'm
just zipped
so
right
proud
through
of
it.
you.
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud of you.
Thank
I'll
you
write a note
so
to your
much.
third grade teacher.
Thank you. Please do.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Mrs. McConaughey? Yeah, Mrs. McConaughey.
Okay, you'll have to spell that for me.
You have a foreword by David Copperfield in your book?
Yeah, that was mind blowing.
How did that come to be?
I reached out to him and I emailed him a copy of the book. That was in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I was driving to pick up my daughter from preschool, and I checked my email at a stoplight, and it said David Copperfield in my inbox, and naturally I panicked. And I called Kostya and I was like, what do I do? It's 2:59. I have to pick her up and I have to call David Copperfield. And he told me to just take a pause and call him later, and everything will be fine. And that's what I did. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't asking him to write the foreword. I was just asking him to look at the book and maybe give me a quote if he liked it. And so I called him and he loved the book and asked if he could write the foreword. And that's how that came to be.
That's really cool. Of both of you and David, it's a neat little story there.
Yeah.
And he talks in his forward even about women in magic, and at the heart of it, I think while it's important to get more women in magic, it's also interesting. Just in general, the general public does not often think of magic as a discipline that needs practice and focus, right?
Right.
And your book is probably the first where it just really leans into the practical application, and I mean that on like almost any media level. Like almost all of magic you see, even if they talk about methods, it's someone who's already practiced, who's knows the secrets, and it's basically just either knowing secrets or not knowing secrets. It's not about actually like the effort to learn and practice and do magic. In fact, that notion can sometimes feel almost disappointing to people,
Right.
that like,
Right.
oh, you're not just awesome at magic, that you actually have to work hard at it. Did any of that thought ever cross your mind writing this book?
Yeah, I think that it's really common to see, especially, it's really not common to see girls in the role of a magician, but it's really common to see girls doing quote unquote real magic in books and movies, and that definitely reflects, our history as humans and women as witches and all of these things. But you can definitely find a lot of books where girls are doing real magic. And I think that also explains why so often kids are surprised when magic tricks don't just work, that there's no real magic to it. And so I wanted to peel back the curtain for kids so that when they do receive a magic kit as a gift or a book of tricks, that they don't just tear through it and, once they figure everything out, they perform it once and then it's done.
Yeah. In your book, the protagonist, she decides to cut one of her dolls in half to try to
Yeah.
restore it, and then it's done. Is that based in any truth anywhere, or did you just come up with that idea?
No, it is not based in any truth, but one reader did let me know that he had discovered his child with a stuffed animal and a pair of scissors, and I feel terrible about it. But I think that he caught the child in time. Once he said that, I was like, oh my goodness, is this what this book is inspiring? And if anyone tells me that their child actually cut their stuffed animal in half, I think I'm going to take it really hard.
Well, that and they just clearly didn't finish the book. They clearly got
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
chapter and put it down.
Right.
Are you self-publishing? Is this out on your own, or?
Yeah, I'm publishing it myself, marketing it myself, doing all the things.
That has to be quite an undertaking.
Yes, it's a much bigger undertaking than I realized it was going to be from the beginning, but it's something I'm glad I'm doing. My career is in marketing, and so I wasn't really intimidated by that aspect of it. When you publish a book yourself, you're doing everything that a traditional publishing house would do, as far as hiring the illustrator and figuring out how you're going to distribute it, and writing book descriptions and sending it to media and applying for awards and getting a Library of Congress number. These are all things that I had to learn how to do, but it's been really fun.
Now that you know how to do it, is this your first book? Like your child said, I learned my first magic trick. It was important it said first, not I learned a magic trick. It said I learned my first magic trick.
I hope so. I hope it's my first book. I have all kinds of ideas and ideas that I've discussed with Kostya a lot as far as what the follow-up books should be. And there's a lot of different directions I could take it in. But I do think that this genre of magic for children is something that I want to stick with, and especially inspiring girls to see themselves in the world of magic.
Yeah. And you even have like a directory link in the book for kids to go learn more magic tricks in it. What was the selection process for what tricks were good for kids to learn?
Right now, there's one trick in the back of the book, and then when you go online, you can learn one more trick. But I do hope to publish, tricks in the future. It's definitely something that we've talked about, and to do it in a uniquely Mila sort of way, Mila being the main character. But I am so focused on this first book, being such a new process for me, that I'm, just trying to figure out this whole publication thing first.
So you selected your own illustrator.
Yeah.
What was the process of that, and how'd you land on who you worked with?
Initially, I had actually illustrated it myself, and because my background's in graphic design, I had figured out a way to license illustrations and then manipulate them to such a degree that they felt pretty original. So I did actually illustrate the book entirely myself. But once I completely finished that book, I felt really proud of the book, that I wanted it to be the best it could possibly be. I felt like my illustrations were good and maybe good enough, but that's not what I was going for once I, felt the confidence in it. And so I started looking online. I went on some freelance websites and I hired a few illustrators to do samples. But then I saw a post on Facebook by another children's author who self-published, and she recommended her illustrator, Srinivasan. And so I reached out to her on Instagram, and she did an amazing job.
Yeah, it's a really cool, great looking book.
Thank you.
I like when some of the words, the sentences bleed into the illustration to finish.
Yeah.
The stuff like that.
I'll give you a little behind the scenes fact on that.
Yeah.
It was really important to me that the words became part of the art, and that is not the case in every or even most children's books. And so I found an online course on how to do hand lettering for children's picture books. I mean, you could not get a more on the dot course for what I was looking for. Yeah. And so I bought the course, and then I asked my illustrator to take it, and she totally knocked it out of the park.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. It is a neat element. I found it very entertaining.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Would you have a second idea for a book right now? Would you want to continue like the Mila series, or would you want to find new characters?
I think as far as characters go, I am probably going to stick with Mila. But there's some adjacent books that I have thought about doing that are in this sort of genre, but nothing that I've really drafted yet.
Hmm. Now, honestly, like self-publishing, it's maybe not as crazy sounding as it used to be. I feel like
Right.
if you were self-publishing, it was like it used to have this feeling of like you're rejected by everyone, and now
Right,
you're just going
exactly.
it alone.
Right.
And
Right.
now, like the internet has been such a great equalizer, where like self-publishing is really common.
Right.
Um, but then on the other hand, a lot of people are self-publishing, right? So
Right.
like,
Right.
so what is? How do you? How are you trying to cut through the noise? How are you finding the self-publishing world?
It's definitely challenging, but so much has changed in the traditional publishing world that for a lot of people, it just makes less and less sense because traditional publishers, they don't typically market your book very much unless you're a celebrity, unless you're Reese Witherspoon coming out with her first children's book. You're
Right.
probably not going to get very many marketing dollars, if any, thrown towards your book. And so my feeling is that if I am going to be expected to market my book regardless, then I want to be the author and the publisher.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me why I would hand over almost all of the profits to a publisher and a literary agent
Hmm.
when they're going to expect me to market it anyway.
Okay.
So that's my feeling today. I could have a different feeling about it as time goes on, but that's the sense that I get. And I have found the self-publishing children's book world to be very supportive, and there's some really great online communities with a lot of information sharing, and that has been extremely helpful as I'm figuring out what all the steps are.
Was that a surprise to you to find those communities already available?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When I started this process, I was not a part of these communities, and the plans that I had in my head did not reflect what I actually ended up doing, which was completely informed by learning from other people's experiences.
And then how hard was it to not get as much feedback as Kostya would like to have? Like, how did you handle him trying to help?
Coach is great. He knows we work together on his business. I mean,
Right.
with my marketing background, I do a lot to help him as well. And so we've learned a lot about working with each other. And he knows that I really excel with independent work and to just let me flourish, you know? And no, so he's great about that. But he's been really helpful when I have questions, and so much about the book, I feel like accurately reflects what it is like to be a magician and what is required. And all of that came from learning from Kostya for sure, because my concept of what it took when I was into magic was clearly off base. So yeah, he's been really helpful. And then there's some, Easter egg type things that are in the book that he and our friend Jimmy Ichihana, who was on Fool Us a couple of times, really helpful with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, with this book, there were specific magic questions that I had that he answered. But otherwise, he knows to, let me go.
Do you remember any of those moments?
Oh yeah, I can tell you. Yeah, specifically, there's a moment in the book where Mila decides that she wants to learn, and well, I should say she realizes that she needs to learn about magic, and she's trying to figure out where she needs to go, and then she realizes that her school has a library, and so she goes to her school's library, and she was looking for a book of secrets, like where's the book with the magic secrets, and so she goes to the library and she discovers that there's not one book with secrets. There are many books with secrets. And so she checks out a very large, comically large stack of books from her school's library and carries them home. And so we wanted to put on the spines of those books real magicians, like real magic books. Yeah. And so Kostya and Jimmy collaborated as far as, what magic books I should include in the pile. And some people have commented like, this is not a realistic stack for a 7-year-old, but that was really not the point. I mean, it was like kind of like an Easter egg for magicians to appreciate it. And sure, if a 7 or 8-year-old is extremely serious, they can go and get, Tarbell or, whoever else. But, but we wanted it to, be some of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a fine. That's great. That's a great little Easter egg moment. The characters in the book, are they based on people?
I no, not really. They're not based on specific people, but definitely pulling, different traits and characters and experiences from various people I've met, for sure.
Got it. Yeah. And then being around all this magic as an adult and watching your kids learn magic, do you still ever get the inclination to want to perform a trick or learn more magic tricks?
Yeah. When Coach and I first started dating and when we were engaged and early in our marriage, we would perform together, actually. I was really excited to, get my second chance after it went so poorly the first two times. And so, yeah, we did do a bunch of performing together, some mind reading routines, and that's actually how he proposed. So your listeners can go on YouTube and look that up. So I did really love it, but we used to joke that, like, for me, like, for him, it felt like a date to be on stage together, but for me, it felt like a little bit of a panic attack. But I did enjoy it, and it may be something that I get back to, but it's not really like the mode that I'm in right now.
Yeah. That makes sense. He proposed to you on stage?
Yeah, it was awesome.
I was gonna say, were you happy about that?
Yeah, it was so wonderful and so wonderfully unexpected. People who were there in the audience, I think, saw it coming because all of our friends and family were there. But I just thought it was because it was such a special occasion that we were performing together and it was in our hometown and it was a public show. So why wouldn't they be there? Not that they were all informed ahead of time, but yeah, a lot of my friends, they thought it might happen, but I thought there's just no way, it's not happening. Like, we have a very well-rehearsed show. I know it's happening from start to finish. And he had made me think he was going to propose like 2 weeks later at this special thing by dropping these bad hints. So I was very, very surprised. I mean, this proposal, it was like a deception on so many layers because we rehearsed a routine that was only going to be performed at this show. And I had memorized the serial number on a dollar bill that I never got to reveal. And he never intended for me to reveal it. Can you believe that?
That's some fine misdirection.
Yeah, it was shocking. He proposed, and then I was like, well, we're going to finish the show now, right? And he was like, that's the finale, Amy. We're leaving the stage. Come on. I was like, what?
Hilarious that you thought that, but also hysterical. The audience would be like, oh, they're engaged. Great. I can't wait to watch the next routine.
Exactly. Please read me my serial number in my pocket.
Writing the story, I mean, I don't know. It has length for a children's book, I suppose. It's a longer story. How many versions of it did you write?
Oh, yeah. So I initially wrote it in 2018, and I wrote it, and then shortly after that, I was pregnant, and then now we have 2 children, and there was COVID, and so just life got in the way, and I had not forgotten about it, but completely shelved it. And then in January of this year, my mom was like, you really should put that book out. And I was like, I don't know, like, that seems really difficult. I don't know. But our second child was now 1 and things started to feel a little bit less chaotic. And so I was like, you know what, let me give this a shot. And so I tweaked it a little bit and put the book together. And then I have a friend who is a professional children's book author, and she was so kind and told me I could send it to her. And so I sent it to her, and she provided me with the most wonderful edits and pointed out some challenges in the writing because I really wanted the book to rhyme. And so she helped me see that some of the meter was lacking. And
oh, that's big. That's not a small thing. That's a big thing.
Yeah, a very, very big edit. But I am so grateful to her. I did end up basically rewriting the book. I probably rewrote 80% of it. The plot stayed the same. The beats stayed the same as far as what took place on each page. But the puzzle of fitting words together in order for the rhythm to be consistent and the rhyme to be strong was like such a difficult like brain teaser that I did end up having to rewrite most of it, but I'm really proud of where the book is at this point because of that.
I mean, it does rhyme and in meter, and it's neat. As someone who does improv and improv singing, I'm always like, I was particularly impressed with some of the words you chose to rhyme and that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like everything rhymes with A and O and that kind of stuff. So
right.
We'll find cooler words. To hang a rhyme on. I'm always more impressed. I was trying to think of even just the plot, but you had the plot nailed from the get-go.
Yes, I mapped out the plot that night that I sat down and wrote the draft in our hotel room. I did map it out first. I think I even created a spreadsheet where I thought, okay, here's what's going to happen on each spread.
Yeah.
And then I went back and wrote the lines.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it's a fantastic book.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on it.
Yeah, and I'd actually love to share it with your listeners. If your listeners visit amykimlat.com, so my name, amykimlat.com/noodler, then they can download a complimentary PDF copy of the book to check out so they know what we've been talking about. And if they love it, of course, I would appreciate it if they, did decide to order a hard copy or even just to leave an honest review on Amazon to help expose the book to more parents.
Yeah, I think, our listeners will do it. Support Amy here. Let's get the book out.
Thank you.
Let's get the word out on this book and have kids check it out. We have a lot of parents who listen to the show and certainly a lot of magicians. And I think this is the first time I've seen anything like this. Really approach the magician endeavor on a super practical and real level, without throwing in unnecessary mysticism or whatever, and have a really cool, amusing book for children that's practical. I think is great, and that's why I wanted to have you on. So thanks for coming on and talking about it. Yeah,
thanks so much, Matt. I really, really appreciate it. Hocus Pocus Practice Focus.
Hocus Pocus Practice Focus. The link will be in the show notes when you download the episode, and there'll be a Patreon post as well, so people can go check it out. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, it's time to thank the people who support me over at patreon.com/mindnoodler. You know who you are because you listen to the podcast. Big shout out to Scoop John B., Mike Wenz, Dr. Scoop Little, Jay Shapiro, Daniel Lozer, Andy Cheek, Jonathan, Jim Dunn, Jake Schneider, Makens Peterson, Jacob Dinklelaker, Elizabeth A. White, Wendy Bumgardner, Ben Sherman, Chris Fisher, IPoopMyPants.com, Joe Mastrangelo, Michael Fisher, Wendy, Gerardo Garcia, DJ LaForge, Gray Whitaker, Monadnock Scoop, Stacy Westerlin, Scott Andrews, Duck Flambe, Chris the Microscoop, Smitty Scoop, Jeff Loomis, Roman, Ian A. Chapman, Donald McDaniel, Graham Forbes, Ruben Berg, Sonic, Peter McDougall, Christy Salinas, Jeff Libby, Nate Walk, Carmen Perry, Daniel Matias Ferrer, Stephen Volcano. Thank you all so much.